public.
Okay, you are now on the record, by the way.
What?
You guys are now on the record. The purpose of this is just for each one of us to go over our amendments. It is not to debate them. It's not to argue them. That's done Tuesday night. So
Got it.
we don't take a vote on it here. Okay, we do it Tuesday night. And I arranged this, thanks to Rose, alphabetically, because you try to figure out how you do it. Some members want to be first, some want to be last. We took it alphabetically. So if your name doesn't start with A, you're in trouble.
Oh,
Amy,
alphabetical
you're
by
first.
name.
My first name? That's weird.
Dick Cheney is second.
No, actually, starting in the operation, Amy's first.
Ladies first.
Alphabetical by department.
Oh, by department. Oh.
Okay.
Okay, so mine are really actually quite easy. So my first amendment is an across-the-board 2% reduction in all departments except for what I deemed to be critical. So,
Is that first responders or what, Amy?
well, yeah, so the ones that I left harmless were the fire department, maintenance and operations, the municipal attorney, that's excluding the office also of emergency management and the municipal manager, police, and the public works department.
Did you really leave?
Questions from assembly members? Eric?
Yeah, sorry, just maintenance and operations seems like it goes to the next line. And same with municipal manager. Are those really zeros? You clearly left the municipal attorney, fire, police, and public work. Hold on, what do you say? Who has the floor?
I'm mumbling.
Yeah, you are. The maintenance and operations and the municipal manager seem to be just a
Well,
two-line
and the
thing.
reason I say, I pulled out street maintenance. So you still see a number for maintenance operations there, but street maintenance is a subsect, and that's what I,
If I can clarify the format of that
Good move.
amendment, the department name when you're adding the exclusions was too long to fit on one line, so it wraps down to the next line.
Right, so that's not a delete. That's not an exclusion. That's just a line.
It's excluding a portion of that department.
yeah. So street maintenance is a subsect of, sorry, I didn't make that clear. Street maintenance is a subsect of maintenance and operations, and I believe street maintenance is a critical function of the municipality. So you'll still see some number there.
So you're taking a 4% cut?
Yeah.
Let me interrupt you for a minute, Amy. Just for the record, when you go around the table and ourselves for the record, start with you, Forrest. I'm sorry I forgot to do that.
Forrest Dunbar.
Felix Rivera.
Nice.
Christopher Constant.
Dick Trainee.
Croft.
Pete Peterson.
Tim Steen.
Okay, continue, Amy. I'm sorry. I just want to get so they know.
The same thing you'll see are in the municipal manager's department.
John's on the phone.
John's on the phone.
There
Yeah.
is a cut to the municipal manager's department, but there was no cut to emergency operations or emergency management, which is housed in that department.
Okay. Anything else, Amy?
No, pretty straightforward.
Question from assembly members? Yours is pretty easy, Amy.
Well, the last thing I'll say about it is I've gone through this process multiple times. In some years, I come with very specific recommendations to the administration to cut the travel budget, cut supply budget, and it seems like every year I take a different approach to it. So this year, I'm taking a general approach, and I'm saying if you don't like my specific recommendations, here's 2% cut wherever you want within these departments.
So you're saving us paper by just doing one amendment.
Yeah, no 50 amendments.
Paper and
needed.
time.
Tim?
In building the budget, what percentage did the municipality decide to increase this year? I mean, was there a percentage that everything went up? Or is everything?
Lance?
So the increases are primarily due to labor, and they're basically contractual, and for those that require increases, but we didn't, we don't have a.
You didn't add a factor in it, just where there was growth, through the contractual items, you put the growth in.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Similar
Good,
question.
Chris.
I thought the departments were directed to make 5 to 10% cuts.
But they didn't.
So that was our guidance initially, and the budget has proposed in it. Some departments still have that maintained percent reduction. I think Mr. Steele's comment was, did they have a percent growth?
Right. No, I understand. Yeah.
I think that information systems went up like 28%. There's some of them that actually went up versus going down, but we know SAP has a cost with it.
Right, and so I guess my point is that there was broad cuts and then some places that rose really high relatively, and that caused some sense of increase. But to me, there are really have been tightening across many of these budget categories, these departments.
Well, I can have Rose send you a document she produced for me that shows the percentage cut based on what Lance asked them to do, the departments took. You'd be surprised how many didn't take a cut. So it was guidance to them. It doesn't mean they had to do it. So,
Thank you.
Rose, do you want to send that out to some members? I think you've still got it on your computer, just so they've got it for frame of reference. Appreciate it.
It worked out to about a 1% cut, Amy. Once you tried to do 2, but you excluded some of the vital, it's a little less than 1%. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, ready to go to the next one? Alphabetically. The next one is mine, $300,000 for the Assembly Department. This is because we're doing vote by mail. We've made a commitment to the city to do a vote by mail. On the regular ballots, we only do about, Barbara, 70%? Because we know they're not going to show up. In this case, we were printing 100% of the ballots to mail them out to everybody. So we knew this was going to be higher. Barbara, you can come up if you want and talk to us about it. She is not only our clerk, but our voting expert.
Your new voting expert. In the budget right now, you have about $60,000 to print ballots. That's what we did last year. But now that we're moving, it's actually 100% plus, because we have to mail about 100% of the ballots. Plus, we have to have stock on hand for people who lose their ballots or want to vote in a different manner. In addition to that, there's postage. So that cost, the $300,000, includes postage to the group of qualified registered voters who will get a ballot package.
Forrest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, one of the joys of being the vice chair is I get to sit in with Dick and Barbara and talk about the actual budget of the Assembly itself. And I think there are certain places where the Assembly can and has, in many cases, sort of tightened our
And did over the years.
We have actually reduced employees. But this is one of the things that sort of happens to live in our budget. It's not really something that we do have control over because we decided to go to vote by mail. But the truth is, we do the elections for the mayor, for the school board, for the LRSA. It just happens to live in our budget. And so we're not debating it right now.
No, we're not debating it.
But at the end of the day, we have to spend the money that's necessary to run the election. The election is going to require a little more money. Yeah.
This decision was made by this body when we decided to vote by mail. And it's just a forerunner of it.
Do we really have any choice on this?
No.
Okay. And are we going to start seeing savings soon, sometime?
Did you know that you cropped? I don't exactly know the answer to that. I think we'll pull some statistics for you after the election. And, typically in vote by mail jurisdictions, the result is what is the cost per vote. And we can tell you what the cost per vote was last year, and then we'll be able to tell you what the cost per vote was this year. So we'll take a look at that.
Chris, what can
I
you do next?
would like to address Mr. Dunbar's comment that we have the school board and the LRSAs. We also have ballot props on our election. In some jurisdictions, the cost of the election is allocated to those service areas, and then the service areas pay their portion of what that election costs. One of the issues that we have explored in the past, if you've seen, we're going to have 166 different ballots this year. And the reason for that is because of the 21 LRSAs. We have tried to work with the municipal attorney's office and planning to try to get the LRSAs to go to appointment instead of to election. And we've had one, I think, that agreed to go to appointment. And then you also changed the code that if they didn't have a candidate, that they had to register ahead of time, or they can't have a write-in, because that costs us so much money to have to go back and the only thing you can do is hand count those ballots. So we wanted to charge them for that, but it would be very complicated, but I think it's something that you could consider. So I just want to make sure that you know that, Mr. Dunbar. I think there's a possibility, and we would have to explore it with the administration and the municipal attorney office, but I think
You're
we
after
could
Chris, I'm
allocate
after
those costs.
Tim. Barbara, you could tell them too about the reduction in manpower, because in the precinct voting, we have hundreds of people we hire. In this case, it's gonna be vote by mail, so we're gonna be hiring less people to do it.
Right, we have 650 election workers that we hire on election day. I expect we're gonna probably have, between 60 to 80 this year.
Okay, I've got some more questions for you, ma'am. Chris, you're next.
That was actually my kind of point, that the savings will be realized, at least on that, the staffing, the massive expenditure of a day's worth of 600 or 520 people and workers, and so we can already point to that as a clear issue.
It's sort of a balance, though. Remember, it's 650 workers at $9.50 an hour. They work one day, they pick up supplies, and they do training. But now I need, just 60, but they're gonna be working for probably about 3 or 4 weeks. They're gonna be working 40 hours. They're gonna be making 12 or 14. Some of the team leads are making 18. Some of those people already work for us, and they work for us during a poll-based election. So I think you're right. I just want to make sure that there's still an increase there's still going to be a cost for those workers.
That sounds great.
Before I go down to Tim, Barbara, what was the voter turnout the last election?
21%. 23.
Okay, we've seen across the country where they've done vote by mail, the percentage just climbs. And keep in mind, that's the purpose of this vote by mail, is to increase the voter turnout. Because for the public to have faith in going to the ballot, we've got to increase the voter turnout. Tim, you're next.
Participatory government, that's true. And the bottom line is that property tax is paying for it. I mean, that's our main source of revenue. And so the people are paying
Actually,
for it.
that and the fuels tax and the tobacco tax, yes.
Yeah,
Government's paying for it.
Maybe.
Not
We
yet.
hope we're going to get some.
Eric?
So have we already incorporated the savings into the budget? I mean, or am I, I'm trying to figure out why this comes as an amendment, why we hadn't, I recognize the trade-off, that'll probably be less dollar per vote and probably an increase in votes, and that we hope that that'll all kind of be a wash. So why wasn't this in the wash?
I do not think it will be a wash, Mr. Croft. The fact is, a vote by mail election costs more than a poll-based election because you have to purchase 100% of the ballots and put postage on them. So it is more expensive to start. For in the long term, I think what you expect is if we have 21% in a poll-based election and we're paying, I'll just use a nice round number, 500,000, and we have a 20% turnout, somebody who's better at math than me can say that the cost per vote is probably around $10 per vote. When we go to a vote by mail election, and if we could get 50% turnout, even though the cost is more, the cost per vote would be less.
Eric?
Yeah, thanks.
But Mr. Croft, we tried to reflect savings in this budget and in this amendment, and Rose can probably help me with more details. We had election workers, so we had a higher cost for election workers. We had a higher cost for moving expenses. We had, one other cost, the ballots, and we took those, and then we needed money for mailing and ballots, and we balanced that out. So this amendment is less than the actual cost of ballots and mailing. And I think Rose can help me out if I'm mistaken there.
The estimated cost for ballots and postage is closer to $380,000. So there are some expenses in a poll-based election that will not incur in a vote-by-mail election, and those savings are reflected there. For staffing, I think the biggest concern in this first go-round is that we have adequate staffing. If we realize savings in staffing this year, it's possible that could be reflected in future budgets, but what we don't want to have happen is not have enough folks to process this first vote-by-mail election.
Forrest?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one last thing, and again, we're not debating this yet, but I think Barbara has done a good job.
Feels like we are.
I know.
I'm just getting information. I'm just
Barbara
trying
has
to.
done
Just
a-
digging down to
Not
it.
you, Eric, you're the only one that's playing by the rules.
You know, Barbara has done a pretty good job of explaining why this isn't just about the money, obviously. It's about increasing faith in our democracy. And I think kind of where those things also overlap is that this is the first time we're doing this. And it's just incredibly important that we do it right. And, you know, if we sort of shortchange this process the first time, we could do lasting damage to the idea of vote by mail.
Any other comments from some members? John, anything?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Another question, move on to the next one. Next one is mine also. What this is, remember I told you yesterday about the increased cost of the audit? This reflects the additional cost. They wanted 10%. Barbara and I negotiated with them down to 5%. But that doesn't mean they're still not going to come back with us and say, hey, we need more because the data coming out of SAP is bad data. So we'll see what happens with that. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is going to be an SAP audit?
No, this is a city audit that's done every year.
Oh, okay.
BDO does the
All
audit.
right, 'cause I was
But
thinking-
SAP is, they send the data, BDO gets the SAP formatted data and then has to do it. Rose, you're better at it than I am. Anything?
For this audit of the 2017 books will include 3/4 of PeopleSoft data and the final quarter of SAP data. So BDO will be looking at reports generated from both systems. The request was 10%. Chair trainee negotiated a 5% increase, which saved the city $28,000. BDO did warn us that if there's significant additional work created by the SAP format, that they may come back for a supplemental, and significant was defined to us as more than 100 hours of additional work.
Forrest?
Well,
Sorry, go ahead, Pete.
So we've actually already talked about, at some point in time, having an audit of the SAP program from beginning to end.
Right, that's
And-
where internal auditor will do that. That's not BDO. BDO is just the one that does the city audit.
Well, I thought our expert told us that we probably have to hire an outside firm to do that audit because they would have to have a lot of specific technical knowledge to be able to do that audit. Isn't that what Zig told us?
Zig said that, but if we do an audit of the entire SAP system, but this is just the audit we do every year. We do, BDO comes in here and does an audit of the city finance to make sure we're conforming to law.
Okay.
And
All
it's
right.
just because we're using SAP, they want additional money.
So, I have a few
Forrest.
questions about this, Mr. Chairman. I guess one's for you and Rose, and the other is for the administration. And it's at regards where the revenue source is. So, for the administration, I'd love for someone to explain exactly where we are with fund balance and how it's going to work. And I've heard sort of conflicting discussions about whether the fund balance sort of exists or doesn't exist and how much it's going to be. And then the question for you, Dick and Rose, is because these costs have gone up due to the SAP project part, is there SAP money or another source of money within the municipality that we could draw upon rather than fund balance? That as we, you know, we could pull money from a different place in the budget.
And I would say that this is an operating expense, it's not a capital SAP expense, it's just the fact that the city's financial reports are now coming from 2 different systems for this year, for this first year. The CAFA reports, it's my understanding, are still being developed in SAP so that information will be available when it's needed by our auditors. When we entered into this municipal audit contract with BDO, it was a 3-year contract with 2 option years, and traditionally the increase has been 4% that BDO has requested. There was an additional 4% always scheduled in for when SAP went live, which was deferred until the system went live, which happens to be this year. So we would have anticipated, I think, greater than a 5% increase this year.
Can we get an answer to the other question?
Go ahead.
So,
Lance?
yeah, thank you. So as it relates to the projected or estimated amount of fund balance that we will have at the end of this year, it is only a projection, because frankly, we won't know exactly how much money we'll have in basically unallocated or unrestricted fund balance until the end of 2017. Right now, as of today, there is no fund balance that's available that is basically unrestricted. Any fund balance that we are using, we are tapping into our reserves, which we will then replenish next year. The projected for unrestricted fund balance right now is probably somewhere around 3 million. That number is going to change, hopefully, to the better, but that's basically the projection that we have right now. And again, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Dunbar, it's literally a projection until the books close. And as I mentioned yesterday at the Budget and Finance Committee, departments are coming in very close. And so that's where we are right now.
Forrest, anything else?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is not a fun time for government, whether it's federal, state, or local. Lack of funding is just, it's what it is. We're dealing with it. John, anything on this amendment?
I didn't catch, excuse me, what Lance said, the projected fund balance, how much is that?
3 million.
3 million.
3 million.
But again, it's projected.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The next one is mine also. This is $45,000 to pay for the requirement to have an interpreter here to translate for our attorney. That's required by federal law. So it is what it is. Yes. Unless you learn how to do sign language, let me know. The next one is Crofts, Constant, Rivera's. Huh?
Will you send me to training?
We could.
Free classes at the library.
You what?
You can take free classes at the library.
Yeah.
On Sunday.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Croft?
So, met a number of times with 4As. They had actually asked for more, and I see Ms. Domboski's amendment incorporates that. They'd asked, they'd had a very large proposal for a mobile thing that was in the 200,000s. We said, we can't do that, bring it down. They brought it down to about 87. And then in talking with Mr. Rivera and Mr. Constant, we put it down to 50. We didn't explicitly making it a match, though they have used it in that way, and they've already got, I think, 20,000 from Providence. Is that what you guys
Yeah,
are?
more than that.
So they're treating it as a matching grant to help their, this won't be municipal employees involved in the needle exchange. There's no employees doing it. It's just to support that effort that keeps people alive.
Question from assembly members. Tim?
Did you chat with them? Do they know this is coming, 50?
Yeah.
We've
you were
been
taking
having
it.
conversations with them. All I've promised them is that we're gonna work hard to get something. It probably isn't gonna be their full ask. And they took that and went forward and sought matching funds and have been successful. And so where we kind of set a benchmark, I think they filled the difference. And the administration has been in conversation with them as well. And so they're pretty in tune.
That's a good,
Other questions from assembly members? Thank you. Thanks, Eric. Chris, the next one is from Amy.
Yeah, mine is the same topic, except for I personally see a great significant public value in fully funding the ask that they asked for. I know that there's about $500,000 that we heard a presentation on how that money would be used for homelessness. I think this still fits in that mission, though I see this as a more significant, immediate public safety need. I'm getting complaints, I'm sure you get them in your districts too, but I'm getting complaints all through my district. And I like the thought of there being, the way they're gonna address it. So I felt this could be a revenue neutral way to shift the money to, I thought would be a more significant direct impact quickly to members of the community throughout the community. So
You mean complaints about needles in the park? Yeah.
Yeah.
We get complaints on all aspects of the homelessness, but that,
yeah, no doubt. But I'm definitely, I think this is a significant issue that should be taken seriously, and that's why I thought their argument was well founded, and I would support the full amount.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Yeah, this question for Ona back in the corner over there. I don't know if you all recall, or it could be you guys, if Eagle River was one of the stops.
It's not.
And so we should have that as a
But I
discussion.
think it could be.
It should be, because
And
they're
that-
heading out to Matsu.
Absolutely, and that
so-
was one of the conversations that came up. I thought, well, if they're gonna go out to Matsu, there's no reason.
Stop and should be at
But
Eagle
to me,
River.
I know whether it's Valley of Union Park or other places, I have friends that live near there. This is a significant issue, and Sharps, and from my experience in healthcare, I don't think this is something that we should shortchange. That's my opinion.
Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so you've decided to take that out of the $500,000 increase for the homelessness
I
problem?
did, and the reason I did that is because I felt the mission was coherent. It was not exactly how the administration's expected to spend that money, but I think it fits into the mission of cleaning up parks and the mission of dealing with some of the impacts of homelessness too. And not just homelessness, but obviously drug use.
Okay.
Other
Thank you.
questions from some members? John, anything?
No, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the next one. Mr. Dunbar, this is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is another revenue neutral amendment regarding the allocation of the $500,000 for homelessness. It's $75,000 to cold weather sheltering on the contingency that the municipalities seek and receive matching funds. If you remember the proposal, let's see, when did we get that? We got a more detailed proposal from the administration recently that identified, I think, more than $100,000 for this purpose with matching funds. I still intend to put this forward. If the administration wants to go further than this, that's fine. But I kind of I want us on record, if people agree to it, I want us on record as saying this is one of the things we want this money to go to. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I do think it's interesting. We have a lot of different amendments here that deal with that $500,000. So I think we have to figure out sort of what order they go in. We're sort of contradicting ourselves as we go through.
And that'll be probably part of the debate on Tuesday. I did ask the administration at our meeting on homelessness, give me a breakdown on the money if it's reduced. I asked Nancy to give us a breakdown because I knew these were coming forward. I just want to know the impact on that reduction if we make it. Other questions from assembly members? John, any questions?
No, thank you.
Eric?
Can I just ask Nancy on that? So some of them are taking the money, some are moving it to very different programs. This one, though, seems almost just a reallocation within to something that you are already doing. What would be the practical effect of what Mr. Dunbar's suggesting?
It's what the first part of what you said, it supports what we promoted.
As opposed to taking it for other stuff or just deleting it, it's almost adding intent language, but it's telling you what to do with it more than it is moving. Okay, I just wanted to understand that. Thanks.
I would say, Eric, that it might, depending on sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead,
It
Chair.
might have a practical impact if it follows one of these other amendments that takes money.
Yeah,
out
okay.
of there, right? Maybe not, but, yeah.
Okay.
Other questions from
Thank you.
assembly members? Thank you. Next one is Ms. Dombrowski.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So a lot of you are gonna look at this and say, wait a minute, you just took 87,000 or 82,000 out. The reason I put the placeholder, and this is a placeholder number of 500,000, because I anticipated other members would have ideas of how to use that money. So I was just gonna use a calculator, and as we adjust potentially this appropriation, whatever's left over, I want the rest from property tax relief. So the intent, and I need to say this, because I've heard this now a couple times, and it frankly bothers me. There are times that assembly members will have a new idea after the public sees these amendments that we should do something different. Whether it's adjust your amount, you missed this amendment, that amendment, it is absolutely appropriate for an assembly member to change their amendment or to offer another amendment on the floor that night. So, you're gonna see this. I have another amendment that I had new information given to me by the Chudiak Community Council last night that one of my amendments is going to change based on that new information. So, Mr. Chair, I know you've said no new amendments, but frankly, that's not really a rule, right?
No, it's not.
So, I want people to know
It's a good target,
if you made a
You have
mistake,
to have a
or
target.
if you thought of something that's just wonderful, or if you want to withdraw an amendment, those things are all appropriate to do within our legislative duties. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
So anyways, that's why I put the placeholder of 500,000 there. I knew that number wouldn't be the number, but I did want to wait and see what everybody else's amendments were. So before I were to offer it, I would adjust that number right there on the floor, and then the same intent would be any balance would go to property tax relief.
So we
Okay.
can
I guess.
disregard any of these things.
You what?
You can
So we
also
can
amend amendments
disregard
on-
training.
Absolutely, absolutely,
So they change the revenue source, for example.
absolutely,
It's all right.
absolutely.
Okay, the next one's mine. This is to try and get some additional money for our hearing officer. Right now, they're paid at 3/4 time. And talking to her, she's working full time, just not charging us for it. So I'd like to actually give her the amount of money that she's working for. So it's just $24,407 would bring her up to full time.
What kind of cases are heard by this person?
A lot of things that we have over the years said the hearing officer hears it. For example, animal control issues, go to the hearing officer.
Property tax appeals don't. They go to a separate place. But this is a law. Okay. Thank you.
So that's the reason for this one. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. The next one is Mr. Crofts.
Yeah,
mine.
and you, Mr. Chairman.
I know.
I spent some time with Seneca Thino, our prosecutor. We've talked about in various forums that as you increase the police, you're probably going to have increased need for prosecutors. Their caseload has generally gone down as our police officers have gone. The number of officers has gone down over the last 8 years or so. And as we've been pushing that number up, I think you're seeing a small uptick, but it'll grow with the police force. So we tried to keep it manageable. I said, sort of if you had 100,000, where would you put it? We had some more, in an earlier draft of this, some more details, talking to Seneca more, and Rose has talked to her most recently. This gives her the flexibility to add some pay increases for her line staff so she doesn't lose them to the AGs as quickly, a little bit for training. Having been there for 2 years, it's a real neat place to get some trial experience. So I think she can sell it as a place where they can go and get in trials really quickly. It's not as much money as I'd like to give them, but that she thinks that'll be a significant help and a morale boost as well. They get discouraged sometimes and forgotten, so this will help.
Other thing is, right now, the state, as you know, has been talking about increasing the prosecutors they have. And we're the place they're going to come shopping to get them. I'd rather keep the ones we have by increasing their pay, because I have a son that used to work for us. And the state said, how would you like $20,000 more a year? He's now a state prosecutor. So they are, in fact, doing it, and they will, in fact, keep doing it. Yes, Forrest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So 2 questions. First,
can work with you.
For you, Eric. I remember early on in the discussion you talked about maybe trying to hire another paralegal or do something like that. Is my understanding correct? This is the only amendment on this topic. There isn't a further.
That's right.
Right.
It had I'd carved out the 90 differently, so we'd had about 10,000 for training, and sending them off to conferences, that kind of cool stuff. And then it was allocated into part raises and part maybe a staff position. By putting it under labor, she can still do that combination of things.
The other question I have, I guess it's for you, Eric, if you have specific knowledge of it, or Rose. If we have more police, so we're getting more cases, we're trying to prosecute more cases here and keep our people. Does that mean we also need to increase our allocation for the defense contract? Right, for the, we have a contract, I don't know, is it on a per case basis? Is it a flat fee? Are they gonna ask for more if we're asking for more cases?
My recollection of our public defender contract,
So it's a flat, okay, I'm sorry.
It was a flat fee, I thought.
they bid on it, and so if they see that growth over the term of their contract, they come back and say, we think it should be more next time.
Conveniently, we have a former legal attorney here, our city manager, who used to be our legal eagle.
So it is a flat fee with a long term. There is an escalation provision if a caseload changes by some very large number, something like 30%. But if the case moving around within the range is now.
And what's the time, if I may, Mr. Chairman, what's the time frame
Right, sir.
on when we put that contract back out? Like, do we anticipate if we go down this route and we're doing more cases that this sort of,
Do you want to talk about this, do we?
the request will come in higher?
Do you want to talk about us deciding maybe to take some felony cases the state's not doing? I'm having that on public safety
Part of the
coming up soon.
negotiation was that we gave them a much longer term for a reduction in the amount that we were paying annually.
Got it.
I think it may even have been 10 years, for a variety of reasons to get it, but it's a while, and I'll see if I can fish that out.
I know it was an agency up in Wasilla area that won the contract, and they actually opened an office down here, because that was one of the things I was asking them. If you're up there, how are you handling the cases? So they actually moved staff down here to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
John, any questions on this?
No, thank you.
Any questions from assembly members? Thank you, Eric. Next to mine's mine. It's the library. And I know we heard about all the terrible things we're doing because we're cutting their budget. I want to cut a little deeper, quite frankly. In this day and age with electronic media, you can get any book you want off your electronic media. So I simply want to reduce the amount of money going into this. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, if someone from the administration could answer, does this mean that we're going to have to close the library on Saturday now? Or what are the changes? What are the effects going to be?
It could be a variety of changes. It could be hour reductions, it could be branch closures, it could be a variety of things.
Okay.
Maybe on this, since we have like a library edition, which does have some of the things they'd likely do, if you could just have the library people respond to the specific library amendments of here would likely be the results of this addition, we would do these extra things, or this subtraction, we would stop doing these things.
Good. I base this on the fact that we don't have a fund balance. We're betting on the roll of the dice that in next year we'll have money to play with. But part of this was is you were adding things in to reduce things down. That's the reason for this one. Yes, Forrest.
I just want to say I want to pass both of these amendments. This one and the next one. Just so we can cover all of it.
I would say something, but I'm not going to right now. It would not be kind.
Yeah, just justify the public's opinion.
Well, we've seen this before, even recently, where people vote on both sides of the question, so.
Well, it's kind of like, Gino, are you sure you want to vote that way? You sure you don't want to change your mind? John, anything from you, sir?
No, thank you.
Okay. The next one is Rivera and Constant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this one seeks to do the opposite of the last amendment. And basically I got
Can't
this
say
number
no.
from the library director, Mary Jo Torgensen, about what it would take to keep the library hours the same, which most of that's related to staffing. And then if I could, just a quick, you'll notice that all of my amendments are based off of fund balance, and I actually took a page from Ms. Domboski's book. And if in the end we don't have a fund balance, I do have an amendment that I'll probably offer in first quarter that cuts certain percentages from different departments to make up for the difference if we don't have any. So, I'm trying
Question.
to be fiscally responsible.
Me too.
Question from assembly members. John, any questions on this amendment?
No, thank you.
Yeah, I would just
Chris?
want to, not a question, a comment that relative to the previous amendment that we heard, the idea of that we have modern media, the one thing that we don't have are a lot of public spaces where people can go and get the access to.
You're
certain
arguing the
services.
merits of it? Why
No,
we
I'm
should
just
vote yes or no?
responding in the opposite of what I heard the chair say.
Well,
That's all.
It's all right, Chris.
That's
Are
the
you done
opposite
now?
side. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
This is public space and we need to keep it open.
Moving on to the next one. Mr. Dyson, sir.
Thank you. Move for approval.
Second.
Yeah, so my goal is to get the administration to have the snow clearing done by a contractor. And we've had that paradigm operating for decades, and get the roads cleared always 7 or 8 hours quicker than Anchorage and often a day. And the cheapest per lane mile of anywhere in the state. And so on. And contractors love it because they've got winter work for their crews and their equipment. And citizens like it because of the excellence of service. I met with the administration, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks ago, told them I was interested in this. They're glad to work together with them on it, discuss how to analyze it, move forward from where we're at to something better. And I've been greeted with a deafening silence on that. And so I talked with some people who have had very senior experience with both the city and our local road district. And I said, how much can we sort of save? And he said, oh, well, I don't know for sure. And I said, 20% They said, oh yeah, easily, it would be 20% cheaper, and with the implication it was more. So I don't know. What I've done here is cut the budget, leaving enough to get through this winter's snow clearing and all that, hoping that something will be negotiated and worked out, and we can have a long-term plan we can modify as necessary in first quarter, second quarter budget adjustments and so on. I want to get this thing rocked off center. Been talking about this for 25 years. Parenthetically, I've also been talking to the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation about the long-term goal. State does Glen and Seward highways. City does all the rest of it with or without a contractor. 80% of the money that the state has been paying goes to the city. Can we guarantee that for 20 years or 15 under contract law? That's my long-term goal, get both those things done. This is the first step. I'm hoping 4 other people join me, and so we fire a shot across the bow administration, get in gear. So.
No, Fred, we're right here. Just speak this.
He was speaking loud enough so you could hear him, Mr. Mayor.
A month and a half ago. Anyways.
Anything else, Fred?
No.
Eric?
Yeah, so this represents a 20% cut?
Negative.
Approximately 26% of the snow removal budget we received from MMO.
Okay.
Other questions from assembly members?
Over here.
Pete, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, is there a private contractor out there that's got enough people and equipment to do the Anchorage contract?
Yeah, Pete.
Go ahead, Fred.
Mr. Peterson, absolutely. That's one thing the private sector is really good about. And a couple of them will come together if they necessary and so on. But dirt moving contractors are delighted to have winter work. The city will probably have a significant amount of surplus equipment that can either be sold or leased. And I'm hoping a bunch of equipment operators might go with it. You know, and some of those details can work out. And as you're a pretty smart guy and you know, there's probably some labor contract issues. I'm hoping they can work those out as well, given some time to make it work.
Okay.
Other question from assembly members? John, any questions, sir?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Next one is again from Mr. Dyson, sir.
Yeah, thank you. You all watched probably with amusement me trying to get people who were testifying to suggest what city services they would like to.
I've used that numerous times, Fred.
Pardon?
I've used your example numerous times. You know when Fred said what to cut, everybody said that's your problem.
Yes, I had some people in email and on the phone that were much more colorful in describing what I should do. So I just thought about what are the things that the city does, they're luxuries. And the one thing I can be sure of is beautification. We all like it, and so on. So what I tried to do here is just that, and had a preliminary try to get a conversation with Alaska or the Anchorage Garden Club, others that might be able to take this over. John Rada, who has a lot of credibility with me, said that's really hard to make that work. We have volunteers doing things on the gardens and so on. So what I try to do is take the one thing that's a luxury that doesn't directly, objectively hurt Anchorage people and do it. I thought about going down the line of recreation. My next target was trails, 250 some miles of trails. Getting the Nordic Ski Club and the biking groups to do that's possible, but that's I decided not to make a shot at that one. That was my next one. And then it was building for recreation and so on. But this is my first shot. You guys will get a chance to vote on whether or not you like new projects and new services enough that you'll take one of these delightful but luxury things and put a knife to its throat. Thank you. And I didn't take all the money either. I wanted some left over for John to use on homeless camps and a person to help coordinate volunteers.
Chris?
Yeah, just matter that I always like to enter in the record when people talk about the trail system, the ski club, the Nordic Ski Club, in fact, Volunteer does provide all of that grooming for all those miles of trails every year.
In the winter.
Yep.
Yep.
And so they're a very, very diligent member of our.
And there's some fees that come back that help too.
Other questions from Assembly members? John, any questions from you, sir, on this one?
No, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Moving on to the next one. Mr. Constant,
Yep.
this is yours, sir.
I too have a
You've been so
place
quiet.
where I could find to recommend cuts for this. At this point, fund balance seems sufficient from everything that I've heard, and if it's not, we'll cross that bridge. This number isn't mine. I didn't make it up. I worked closely with John and Parks, and this number is an increase of essentially a second team of camp cleanup, and then a new innovation that would be a Parks ambassador crew, which is three or four folks who would be going to the frequent places where these camps crop up and being a presence to ensure that the camps are being taken care of on a regular basis and kind of heading off trouble on the front end. So it'd be a very assertive cleanup effort that would be matching essentially the assertive service side of this equation, helping to house and doing the other side of the equation. So that's the intent here, is to ensure that we actually do take an action step. I've sat with probably only 2 people in this room at a number of those homeless committee meetings for a number of years now, going on 4 years almost, more than any other members of the public, and we are always talking, and we're never doing. And this is our first real concrete effort to do something from the municipality, and I think that this and the other amendment or the other funding are hand in hand what we need to do to jumpstart that effort.
Question from Assembly members. Yes, Forrest.
Well, we did do stuff last year about this. We did actually do some certain funding to clean this out, but we can talk about that on Tuesday. What I wanted to ask was, just looking through, this is not specific to your amendment, Chris, but just looking at all these different amendments impacting the fund balance, I would love if we could get some kind of running total on the night, whether it's from Rose or whoever else, it just shows like where are we at. We've reduced fund balance.
It'll be Rose.
Just let us know where we're at. You know what I mean?
CFO usually does that too.
He does
As
it.
we go, maybe even put a little counter up on that. Look at it.
Just to let you know, where we're normally doing this is we'll take a break to allow the administration and Rose to give us the final numbers before we.
But what I'm asking for is
Bring
not
it
the
down.
final number. I'd like a sort of running as we're going on the night, a running total.
We can do that for you.
We've done that in the past.
The math is,
We'll have women with cards.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a fight.
I usually.
Don't say that. That happened years ago with AO 37. Okay, it happened. Anything else?
That's right.
I don't know why we can't have men with cards.
We can.
That's right. Anyway.
Decide which one you want to hold.
I'll recruit.
Okay, the next one's Mr. Rivera's.
All right.
Parks and Rec.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this one's along the same lines of Mr. Constance. It's just smaller, doesn't do sort of the, what did you call them, park ambassadors.
Yeah.
That one I think it's a good idea, but I think we can either do that in first quarter or maybe next budget cycle. That's it.
Questions from Assembly members? Mr. Dyson.
Boy, pardon my skepticism, but these 3 amendments to add money came up to within,
$1 million.
no, comes up to within $11,000 of my decrease. I claim,
You claim authorship, right?
no, I claim tilt. Are you guys offering to support mine if?
We gotta add more.
You just change the funding
We
source.
didn't make it all the way up.
So,
Okay.
is there collusion here? Do these guys have a secret?
Okay,
look at my
let's shut the
numbers?
record off. We're not getting to that. That was years ago.
Collusion?
My numbers.
It
came
was,
from the
it was,
It was the Russians.
it was a ethics violation filed against some of my colleagues on the Assembly by people that thought that they were colluding on their amendments.
It was drones, that's how we knew what. we
Could have
were
been.
doing. Drones.
Okay, anything else on this amendment for Mr. Rivera? John, anything on this?
No, thank you.
Okay. The next one is mine. I want to carve $150,000 out of the $500,000. And quite frankly, I want to clean up the homeless camps because far too often. I don't care how we do it, whether I have to support yours or not to do it. I simply want to move money and clean these camps out, because so often the public sees these camps. They're like permanent homesteads. They're never done away with. And we've got to put money in to get rid of them, because right now there's not the money to do it. Yes, Amy?
Mr. Chair, I would just ask for process-wise, when we go take these amendments up, my $500,000 one comes at the end of all of these amendments, because I can see mine's like number 13 or number 8 or whatever it was, and yours is 17. So I'd like to see what happens with your amendment,
Okay,
if you'll let me do that.
it's fine. Rose, can you? Thank you.
Change the order of the amendments.
Yeah, it's.
I want mine though.
No, yours can come at the beginning. What I'm saying is, my intent, as I stated on the record, was I would wait to see what happened with that 500,000, and then my amendment would be the remaining balance. And so it doesn't work if I do it first. I'm sure it's gonna get voted down.
Keep in mind that we've got all our amendments here, but the administration's going to take these and do an S version, and then give it to us on Tuesday with those things they've decided they want to support. Keep in mind it takes 6 to process, pass this, and 8 to override the mayor veto, which we've done before. Not this mayor, but other mayors.
He's been waiting for a chance.
Huh?
He's been waiting.
I'm waiting for a chance. Okay, the next one's from Mr. Whittleton. John, this is the one, the police, sir.
Well, none of the budget addressed police on Stewart Highway, which is a citywide issue. Excuse me, and the $200,000 is roughly equal to what we got from the state. It's let the APD be down on the Stewart Highway about quarter time patrolling. So I wanted to keep this roughly neutral, so I took money out of 2 additional projects that I really like. So it hurts me to have to do that, but I think it's so important that we have at least some rudimentary level of policing on Stewart Highway. So that's why the money out of the code abatement for cleaning up deteriorated properties, which is something I really am pleased to see, and also the homeless initiative. But we need to address this police issue by the patrolling on Stewart Highway.
Question from Ms. Members. Mr. Dombowski, ma'am.
Thank you. John, that $100,000 from the homeless initiative, is that out of that $500,000 that we've been discussing?
Trying to make your math easier.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions from Assembly members? Thank you, John. There are no questions, sir. Next one's Mr. Rivera.
Thank you. I think I have the last.
You keep adding
3.
things in here.
I know. I'm such a big spender. So
That's on the record. Go ahead.
My last 3 are regarding public transportation. The first one is dealing specifically with fuel supply costs. In 2017, there was a reduction. We obviously are seeing gas prices go up. So that's what that one's dealing with.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I was at a community council meeting this week in Mountain View, and one of the members of the school board was there, and she made a very pointed statement that the school district is now grappling with what a 10-cent per gallon increase does to them as well. And I anticipate that we're going to hear.
They're exempt.
Yeah,
Are they exempt?
Yeah.
And then what about public transportation?
Exempt.
Yeah, they're,
Any
he's talking
government-
about the just oil prices.
General.
Oh, okay.
Not the gas tax.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You can do nothing about Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
You might
okay.
try,
No,
but I don't
that's
think you're
fine.
going to pull it
That's
off.
fine. I just wanted to be clear.
Trying to help with Russia.
Government-
You were talking about the general increase, not,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Eric?
Are these 3 meant to be in the alternative, like, increasing, or would you do them all if you had, if funding were no issue?
Yeah, I haven't decided yet which ones of these I will actually move forward on the floor.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions from Assembly members? John, anything on this one?
No, thank you.
Okay. The next one's Mr. Rivera.
And thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's adding money.
So this one, again, public transportation, specifically putting back some holiday service into the schedule. And these days are specifically consumer days. So think like Black Friday, where folks need to get to work. And so we're just giving them that access to do so.
I'm sorry, I can't resist it. So would they be able to get on the buses with big packages too? Or is it just to take them to work? Sorry. Tim?
Yeah, my point on the bus system is, it's kind of ironic that in our last meeting, people had to cut their testimony short to get out at 8:15 or whatever.
Take the bus.
For the last bus.
I know.
And we stayed until 11:30.
What concerned me was that when we had our person that works on the commission say they needed 2 to 3 years to determine the impact of the bus changes, that's way too long. I'm sorry.
Well, we heard.
We'll talk more about that.
We heard you can't get home, can't get to work.
I couldn't even imagine trying to walk down. I guess
You can't get there from
Huffman.
here.
One person said they had to walk Huffman down. That's crazy. Anything else on questions on this amendment? Thanks for bringing this forward, Felix.
Wow. About to talk again.
Okay, go ahead, Felix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this one is for public transportation, an attempt to reverse the first quarter budget reductions for the department, particularly because stable funding for this department is extremely critical while they transition to a new bus route system. That's it.
Rose, could you figure out for the body what all these amendments taking fund balance actually means, money-wise?
I have that right here.
Thank you, ma'am. I figured you might.
So if all of your operating budget amendments that were proposed here were to pass,
That's the increases and reductions?
with your additions and reductions, you'd be reducing the budget by 5.8 million.
And the biggest chunk is Mr. Dyson's.
No, Amy's and Dyson's.
Amy's.
Has
I
close to a $4
restrained
million
myself. I was
reduction.
really gonna go for 5%.
So I think some other.
Eric, go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry. I mean,
That's all right.
so many of these depend on each other or are big Hail Marys that it's really hard to do that. We've got to be very conscious of it as we go through in the running total and maybe even having a target for how far you want to go down or up. But I don't think you can just add up all these. There's some are alternatives to each other.
I know, Eric. Amy?
Rose, have you done the numbers with just the increases and taking out the duplicative ones? Just saying, okay, Felix has 3 different ones, all affecting public transit. If the most expensive one passed, have you done those numbers yet? Could you do those for us?
Just picking one amendment for each department?
No. What I'm saying is, look at all the departments with increases. And then figure out, okay, all the ones that are pulling, I'm looking specifically at all the ones that are pulling from fund balance.
The only duplicative amendments that are in here are the parks. The public transportation is all separate subjects.
Okay, so I can't imagine all 3 of those.
No, I mean that's.
But okay, if you can, just the ones that are duplicative, then the Parks and Rec one.
Who knows? You'd be very persuasive.
Just a second.
Well,
Thank you.
I can't believe a lot of things these days, but, so I guess what I'm trying to get at is all the people that are trying to pull from fund balance, if you take the most expensive scenario, just from the ones that are for
Be
fund
about
balance.
1.9 million.
1.9 million.
If we remove the duplicative parks, which is about 400,000.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Dyson?
Yeah, thank you. Lance,
Just increase.
what are the assumptions about municipal revenue sharing? They're in this budget.
We're, the same amount that we received this year would receive next year.
All right, are there any other fund sources that are, depending on kind of the capriciousness of some other government entity, matching funds or federal?
Yeah, and the fund, the state revenue sharing amount number is about 7 million, 7.2 million in total. Because we had 4.3, and then they would pass the capital budget, they give us a little more revenue sharing, so the sum of those two is a little more than 7, so that's the assumption we took.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. John, anything from you, sir?
No, thank you.
We're moving to capital. Okay. Now going to capital. We're always so pleasant here at this one. It's Tuesdays. Should be interesting. See how it is. Okay, this next one we'll start off with capital. First one is Steele, Training, and Croft. Mr. Steele?
Yeah, this is just to get off the dime on solving a long-term problem of Chesapeake flooding down at Arctic. And so it's moving some money forward and I'll let the powers that be decide specific where it is, but what I want to do is them to improve flow rate through the lagoons. And I'm told there's hazardous material in one of them, and so we can't really get in there, and I said, you're gonna have to do it sometime, so get in there and do it. Anyway, so whatever happens on it, where they choose, whether it's dredge a channel or whether it's dredge the lagoon, I will leave it to their decision. But if it floods again this year, it's flooded 2 years since I've been on the assembly and since we've been working on it. And every time it gets in the houses, and it's something that is our obligation to fix.
We have lots of people lined up, so obviously they must like this. Forrest, you're first.
Sure. So I have two questions, one from the administration, and I guess it's more a comment than a question, although I need Rose's opinion on this too. So, the proposed amendment, add new project, change existing project. I feel like that doesn't, change existing project could be changing a project that's already planned to be funded on this year's bond. And what this does is changing existing project, but it actually is moving money, is that right?
Moving
From
a portion of
2022 to the 2018 bond. So in effect, this is increasing the size of the 2018 bond.
But reducing the size of the 2022 bond.
Yes, true.
I like that.
But, the 2018 bond, but there are other changes, I believe there are some other change projects in here that are actually moving within the 2018 bond, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the case, Rose? Are there any projects
There
in
are
here
some
that are?
proposed deletions from the 2018 bond.
Right.
There's one that hits 2018 and the future year 2020 or something.
Yeah, okay. And that was something like, for example, last year, Pete and I did that. We, instead of moving something from the future or something from the state, which we know we'll never get, we took funding from one part of our district and put it into a project in a different part of our district. And, anyway, we'll talk about that on Tuesday night. The second question I have for the administration, could you remind me the top level numbers? What's the total size of the bond as proposed right now? The capital project.
45.9.
45.9, and what was it last year?
I'll have to confirm, but I want to say 46.8.
Okay. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And follow up, Lance, have you heard what the school district's asking for their budget this year for bonds?
I have not.
Last one I heard was $54 million. So
Which is going to be, they've said it's going to be less than what they're retiring.
it's less than what they're retiring, but keep in mind, in years past, they had state assistance. There's no longer any state assistance on school bonds. Chris, you're next. Any on this?
I'll debate this when it hits the floor.
Okay. Felix?
Yeah.
Questions on this one?
I just want to clarify, this for the drafters, does this have anything to do with the study in the box culvert, or is this something different?
The box
Go ahead.
culvert is a portion of this $4 million that's out there,
Got it.
part of the design. The thing is, we did duplicate studies on this. We already decided, we had a study way back when that said we need to do something with this creek. Then we had a flood, and then they said, oh, well, we need a study. Well, we had the study, made the decision. We didn't choose the most expensive. We chose the middle one to solve the problem, and nothing's happened on it.
Okay.
And so I'm just trying to poke the ox.
Thank you.
Other questions from assembly members? John, any question from you, sir, on this one?
No, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the next one. Mr. Steele?
That's me too, huh?
Yes.
Is that the
Lois
Lois Lane?
Lois, yes.
Lois Lane.
Lois Drive, but it should
Lois
be
Drive.
Lois Lane.
Should be
I agree
Lois
with
Lane,
you.
shouldn't it?
Yeah,
We need to change
and I
that.
lived on that street, we tried to get that changed, we couldn't get enough signatures.
I have had at least a half dozen contacts on safe walk to school in that particular neighborhood. Lois is used as a cut through at high speed, and they charter school's right there by it. I'm not supposed to be arguing it, but anyway, there's a lot of traffic from parents dropping off kids. This is just to improve the pedestrian area around the school, in essence, to give safe walk to school. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
Question from some of your members. John, any questions on this one?
Well, a comment and then a question. Is this just for the crosswalk?
Crosswalks, sidewalks, and there is some lighting there, maybe lighting improvement, but I'm told that there is safe walk to school money. They don't know if there's going to be enough of it, and there may be some other bond money that isn't dedicated. So they may have been able to do it without funding, but I put $300,000 in there just to make sure that at least the worst part of it gets upgraded.
Okay, that's not much money in terms of road projects.
Well, it's sidewalks, and painting across asphalt and signs. That's what it is.
There really aren't sidewalks on Lois.
And anytime we talk about Lois Drive, I have to point out it should be Lois Lane.
Yes.
That's so inside, but we hadn't thought about that yet, John. Thank you.
It's hard on the phone to hear you guys. You mumble.
I know it. I appreciate you there. Moving on, the next one's mine. And this is for traffic signal light at station number 3. Remember before station number 3 was on Airport Heights, and they pulled that station down, but they never bothered to put a stoplight on station 3. So we've had numerous accidents barely averted. And the time to do this was before we brought online, but we can't go back in time. So this just gives us money to put a stoplight on there on demand.
New stoplight or?
There is no stoplight, period.
Move the stoplight from the other station.
I don't care how they do it, because that state light, I'm told that stoplight is still live on Airport Heights. And quite frankly, I want the thing shut down because there's no fire equipment there.
But they don't need it.
I know.
It provides access to the mall there. But that's another project.
Yeah.
It'd be one of those
Go ahead,
where when
Eric.
the fire station goes, it
They hit-
automatically.
automatically
So
hits.
they get the trucks out.
Gotcha. Chris, what?
No, I was just gonna say what he said, the light at the old station through the airport height provides access to the mall, but it doesn't.
No, it
It's
doesn't.
actually further down. and
It's
a
about a
light
quarter of a
that-
mile from it.
It's a light that triggers when they pull out of the fire station.
And
They
only
can
just to stop it.
they can shut traffic in either way.
This is a public safety issue. Yes, Pete?
We.
I think it's actually in your area, Pete.
We had a difficult time finding an acceptable location to build this by.
lines.
We were looking for a location when I was in the legislature, and I remember Representative Gruenberg and I had a meeting in his office about this. And so anyway, when Paul Honeman and I walked out to this site to physically see if we thought it was going to work, and the only problem we saw was that there was going to need to be a stoplight on Bergar, or otherwise there could be an accident. So we anticipated that, and so this is not a surprise. So I actually think this is a good amendment.
And quite frankly, if there's an accident, a fatality, they're going to take us to court and say, why didn't you put one in there? And I'd rather not lose the life of citizens or firemen coming out of that. So that's the reason we're bringing this forward. John, anything on this one?
No, thank you.
So, thank you. Next one is mine also. This is on Tudor Road in McGinnis. You know where Station 14 is? They're on Tudor Road. They have to wait till traffic's not coming in. People don't slow down on Tudor Road for any reason except a light. We'll give that station a light, so when they've got an emergency, they can hit the button and go out there and stop traffic on Tudor. That's the purpose of this. Have we had accidents there? Yes.
Is there a divider at that point or not?
Not yet, but the state's looking at putting one in along the way, all the way from Lake Otis down to New Seward Highway.
Yeah,
We're
that
talking
would
about.
not be a good idea.
Yes, Amy.
So just so I'm clear, this $2 million would not only be for the study, but for the design and the construction?
Yes, lights, because there's no electricity put in for it.
Right.
So you'd have to do electrical and everything.
But it's all inclusive?
It's all inclusive, but it's something that needs done. I had Tim Potter work out the numbers for me.
Oh, well,
And we know Tim.
Yeah.
So, any questions on this one from the body? John?
No, thank you.
Okay. The next one is Mr. Crofts.
Yeah, and this number 5 and number 6 are two different approaches to solving the current aspect, the West Park aspect of the gravel pit controversy that still rages in the southern part of our district, so the Sand Lake area. I did a big, longer than usual description. Just many of you are familiar with this. Some of you were involved in it before I was, but there's been competing studies about whether when they had the gravel pit and they hit an aquifer, and now that portions of that aquifer are exposed, and the things we put in that aquifer, does it reach the wells of the prior homeowners? Some indications that it does, some other studies that say it doesn't. The residents feel strongly that their well water is threatened and affected.
Compromised.
Yeah. And so, and recently, the West Park development there, which has its own stormwater containment, but when they have a big event, it overflows into this aquifer, into the Pauline's Pond. It was supposed to be only 100-year events. That's happened twice in the 4 or 5 years since it's been in. Once on an event that probably shouldn't have triggered it. Anyway, so a lot of concern, and they see that happening. This would overflow that away into Cook Inlet. So one is for the whole part, $2.14 million. The other is to do in this bond, $600,000, and then the remainder in the next bond.
Question from some members.
Just another comment.
Tim?
We own it. We own the pond. We own the liability if somebody were to get damaged in that. So when we start talking about filling that pond, your ears are perked up.
Forrest?
Yeah, so that, I think, Tim, you just partially answered my question, although, and we could debate this on Tuesday, but I think I'd like to have some more information before we got to that point. For some reason, this struck me as something that would be a great state capital project. And I'm not sure why that is exactly, but what role do you think the state would traditionally play here if they had capital?
Yeah, no money.
Would this be something that usually be in the state capital budget or on the bond?
Go ahead, Chris. Well, I mean, having served in both, this was controversial because we allowed development in that area.
And we as the municipality.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Eric.
Oh, well, Chris can.
Chris?
Well, it was controversial when, as your note here says, DEC authorized, and the UAA came back and said, well, maybe not. And so all of the development happened in accord with kind of the results of all that work. And this proposal isn't to fill in the gravel pit.
No, it's not.
This is just to channelize the outflow that might run through the neighborhood. And I did receive a direct communication, I don't know if y'all did, from Senator Costello at the state asking us to deal with this. And so, the state isn't looking at this as
But they're not.
an option.
Go ahead, Forrest.
I
Not
think
to
this
me.
might be getting into debate.
Me, it said he might pay for it. She might pay for it. There.
What's that, Ethan?
Ethan?
You said something?
So the initial conversations I had with Senator Costello was that she was gonna get an appropriation from the state to help fund
We have a
the
letter.
project.
That's what I heard.
And then this would only fund part of it, and then the state would kick in something, or is this the whole?
That's the whole price tag for the West Park portion, stormwater overflow. 2.1.
I might have to declare a bit of a conflict here. I'm a private realtor, but I am under the brokerage that runs this West Park development.
Well, we'll deal with that on Tuesday.
Okay. So,
But thank you.
yeah,
Any
Amy, get
additional
ready.
Details you could provide would be great.
I will.
Yeah, you'll need them because that sounds really close to a conflict.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there,
Go ahead, sir.
is there a way to, and the administration talked about this too, is there a way to put something on the bond in a way that is contingent on state funding, basically matching state funding?
We can ask administration.
Well, you can get into the legalities of making it extreme contingent. If you did, we design it and we're expecting, part of the CIP has a mix of state and municipal and other sources. Often, when we put a state source way out, we just mean we don't we don't know what's gonna happen, we're just assigned it to it. But you can assign some portion of it as state.
Right, and yes, but I think the assumption last year is that, and maybe this year too, is that state capital funding is close to zero. So when you say that we're gonna fund this with state money, it actually means we're not gonna fund this.
Right.
And perhaps this is one of those few cases where we're serious. If Senator Costello is able to deliver state funds, where we could say, here is something that we will do in partnership with the state.
Eric?
Well,
Go to
I sat in a lot of those meetings, and Representative Grin and Senator Costello were interested in trying to help. I don't think if you allocated this over the next 4 or 5 years, you would get significant state, for the reasons you said. And it's a problem that I'd like to fix. And obviously the Sand Lake Community Council and Sand Lake residents want to fix it. It is, and the AEDC study was Norm Rokeberg pulling them in but it was, the state was involved, but it was mainly us permitting and allowing that development in that area that has caused this ongoing concern.
Tim?
The state, and Mia Costello's letter talks about it, the state actually funded the study of the aquifer.
Right.
To see if in fact that was an exposed aquifer.
Yeah.
And his conclusion was, yes, it is an exposed aquifer. All this is doing is upgrading the stormwater runoff pipe
I could do that.
so that we don't have to dump into Polly's Pond, that it's big enough that we don't have an overflow of days out. And so what we're doing is enlarging that outflow to the bay to take it off. But that doesn't do anything for the risk that we have with that open aquifer. So there's another one, I think, where we were going to fill it. I don't know if we have an amendment on it.
To fill the pond? You like doing that,
I didn't.
Not sure I do.
But I probably should have.
Ms. Dombowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, if possible, I'd like Mr. Kropp to speak on the next amendment, amendment number 6, because as I'm hearing the discussion about potential state funding, his next amendment with the same issue splits the funding over 2 years, which would mean we would have a little bit of money to get started next year. If state funding came, then we could just adjust the 2019 CIP and we wouldn't need it. So I don't know if that was your thought, or could you
I
explain?
introduced both of them, and so I did speak to it, but I'll be glad to do it again. Yeah, both 5 and 6. 5 does it all in the 18 bond, as you said. 6 is fund the design, essentially, does have it street ready, and then it would be on the 19 bond,
19
or you could
bond,
get
yeah.
some portion of it. Anything you could get from the state then would offset that. Yeah.
So, Mr. Groff, would you think, in light of the conversation and the discussion about state legislators being very active, if we went ahead and included the design for the 2018, it would show that we have a vested interest, like we're moving forward, we're ponying up our portion of money. Do you think that would help potentially get, if there is state money, to be able to have that? I mean, do you think, you proposed it, so obviously you think it's a reasonable approach, but do you think that part will help?
Right. I think either option is appropriate. That's why I wanted to present them both. But I think you do make a good point. You do the full design. It's now street ready, ready to build, and it makes
More personal legislature to get.
yeah.
funding for
It frames the whole thing. It's not general anymore. It's all ready to go, and that's an appropriate approach too.
And we have skin in the
Second.
game.
Forrest?
Yeah, I think the administration could maybe speak to this, but this might be the kind of project in the future that stormwater utility might be interested in as well. Could you, Eric, would you be willing, or Tim, would you be willing to talk to Representative Gren, Senator Costello, or someone else from the state legislature, and let's have them, if they're available on Tuesday night, to speak to this?
Great.
That would be helpful.
Help us make our decision.
Or at least a comment, some kind of clear communication on their position.
Yep.
Anything else on this amendment, these two? John, anything?
Yeah, I used to live here 20 years ago, and this was a big issue back then. But I wonder how, this is mostly an issue, or probably an issue with people who have wells in the area. And do you know how many people with wells are in the area?
I'll get the number. There, a lot of that area is still on wells. So it's a
least a half dozen, maybe more.
I'll get you the number, but it's not a small number anymore. That whole area has still a lot of well users.
Dick, on
Yeah, I
that,
was there, I thought of that too. I think at some point, a well not the same, city water is not the same as well water. But, it might be cheaper just to pay to put them all on city water.
The political fight would be enormous.
yeah, and just a sidebar
Chris?
note, that area is one of the areas in town that has high arsenic in their well water. So most people are doing if they're sensible and they have a complaint, are filtering their water already. It's
Higher
a
sting level?
higher level of arsenic.
Is, in terms of this aquifer, is
Yeah.
it just the people that are up the hill in that area that are of concern for that aquifer? The aquifer does not run across.
So that's
Right.
Sky Hills.
Okay.
Sky Hills.
The next one is yours, Amy.
Thank you.
Remember number 7?
This is an amendment that I had questioned why it was in the CIP during O&D presentation. And I did go back, Homestead Road Extension, this has been a project that the Chugiak Community Council and the neighbors have been absolutely against for a number of years. And it keeps being one of those projects that keeps popping up in the CIP and nobody really knows why it's still there. But I did talk to the Chugiak Community Council last night, and that was part of why I made my comments earlier. And they provided me with their top 3, and this is coming from the road board actually, but they voted as their top 3 for that particular area. So my intent, and I'm going to pull out Homestead Road extension project out, but I was hoping to replace it with whatever, is about the same. That was my intent, but I still have to figure out the numbers and make sure.
Is this state or?
Yeah.
Forrest?
Yeah, so that was my question to you, Amy. When you say you're going to perhaps replace it with similarly sized projects, is that still on the state request, or are you going to shift it over to the bond?
No, I'm not planning on shifting it to the bonds. But again, we have a whole list, and a couple of things that they gave me, actually, I think 1 or 2 of the projects have been done. So I just need to go back and double check. But I do have the email they sent me late last night. So that's why I said this is still a kind of a work in progress. My initial gut reaction when I saw it was just to delete it. And that's what I was going to do. And last night when I told them that, they said, please don't do that. Yes, delete it. But we want to keep a placeholder in there of whatever our other priorities were. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense.
It's fine if it's staying in the state, not going to the bond.
Chris?
Yeah, to the point that Ms. Nabosky made about projects showing up from the CIP into the bonds, that community councils aren't adding into their list and in fact are deleting from their list, but year in and year out, these projects just keep repopulating that list. And I am one to support any kind of effort on our end to set policy that says that's not okay. For those of you who didn't come to the community councils, you might not have seen the fact that this happens, but year in and year out, restriping and putting 4 lanes on A and C couplet is a project that comes back like a zombie every year. And so I like the idea of us sending a message to the state, to whomever is filing these priorities, that you need to hear the communities that are making these arguments. So I'm glad that you made that comment.
Well, and if I may, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead,
just
ma'am.
follow up. One of the other challenges I have, it's actually with the city, it's not with the state, why they're showing up on the CIP.
Of course.
The Chugiak Community Council did in fact submit their CIP list, but when they checked back with the city said, well, we never got it.
Right.
And I know there was challenges with the computer system, so Chugiak actually went to the extreme effort to make sure to provide hard copies for the city, but somehow it's still not.
Yeah.
That's what the president told me last night. So again, that's why I said, resend it to me, I will double check and take a look at it, but my intent is to stay neutral and not add to the bond, but just replace their projects and try to clean up what we think should be their capital projects.
Just one quick
Go
follow-up
ahead,
to
Chris.
that. And similarly, and again, I was pointing my concern really to the city, because the city is the one who takes the CIP list from the councils, and somehow they get scrambled like eggs every year. And I have the same issue. None of my councils' lists are up for 2017, though they all tell me they submitted them. And, anyhow, so yeah, there are challenges there.
Would you, this has been going along as we've had this process going on. I was community council president for a number of years, and we'd see projects we had thought had died They just kept reoccurring every year on
That's
the list.
Homestead Road, so when you see that, that sucker needs a stake in its heart and just go away.
When it takes a decade to get a
Good.
project off the ground, it's not surprising that there's confusion as to
Yeah.
whether it's a priority or not. And so it would be nice if we could, that it wouldn't take that long to get a project off the ground. My entire tenure is gonna be here trying to get a couple of road projects done.
That's the hard road.
But Tim, if you accomplish that in the 10 year on, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Some people come on this summit and don't do anything. I can give you names if you'd like. Anyway, number 8 is yours, John.
This would pull off of the bond, a project that is required because of a misguided Alaska DOT project. And what I'd like to do is, and expect to be able to do, is take that DOT project off of the MTP and the TIP. And that would mean we don't have to do this. But that project is a big project to take some pressure off of Diamond and Seward Highway intersection.
We've got
But it brings traffic directly into a quiet neighborhood, which would be devastating to that neighborhood, and it also dumps an $11 million cost on the city.
Okay, we've got some assembly comments. Forrest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I don't want to start by just commending John for actually pulling something from the bond. Because I do think it should be a priority of ours to keep the bond around the size it is now. I guess my question for the chair and for John is, are we comfortable voting on this amendment earlier? Right now it's 8th, but I think the decision on this will probably
We can-
color my decisions on some of the latter ones.
Forrest, we can move them around.
Can we take this up, in the top, one of the first 3 we take up maybe?
I'll try.
John, do you oppose that at all?
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Chris?
John, with your permission, I'd like to be listed as a co-sponsor on this one.
Well, you want your name on this too?
I do. I do.
What's piggyback, right?
It's more the AMAT's work, and that we continue to see this process, and I want to be part of telling them no.
You next, Pete. Okay. Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we discussed this at the AMAT's meeting yesterday, so I actually was not surprised to see this pop up today. And I was wondering about that when I first saw that they're going to be shifting a lot of traffic into an area that's got tons of condos and a lot of foot traffic. So I think this is a well thought out amendment, John. I'll be voting for this.
Any other comments? Anything else, John, on this amendment?
No, thank you.
Okay. Number 9 is yours too, John.
This doubles essentially the amount that we would have available for general traffic calming. And in my year and a half or so on the assembly, the most common call that I get is speeding in my neighborhood.
Speed bumps.
And we have so little money to help with that. This would go, at least for 1 year, help us to have a much quicker impact on that.
Ms. Dembowski?
Thank you. John, would this bond traffic calming money just be in ARTSA? Would it just be in Anchorage, or would it be applicable to Eagle River? I'm assuming you just mean Anchorage.
You don't have any ARTSA in Eagle River?
We have Subursa.
We just did it, that's right. Okay. Well, you should do something, split it up some way. Get some for you, because I'm sure you have the same issue.
Does this add to your assessment?
I was gonna say, well, we have our own road service area for it, so, but it has to be, I think it has to be specified.
In ARTSA.
Yeah, this is ARTSA only.
It's on the ARTSA bond, spends in ARTSA.
That's what I thought, it just didn't say it, so I wanted to.
I would say, Amy, the calls I get on this are generally ARTSA. And my part of the part of my district that's, hillside and is outside of ARTSA is generally not so much an issue. There's a few neighborhoods in there.
Okay, thank you,
Have some
John.
problems and not many.
Thank you, John. Does the administration have a position on speed bumps? The last administration would not let speed bump go through. And that's a major request we get for traffic calming from community councilors, speed bumps. And I was told the process now is where the traffic engineer does a study, but the final decision is made by the fire department to whether you can have one or not. So who makes the decision on a speed bump? Because community council wants them.
So the traffic engineer makes a decision on the speed bump, but the decision is made in consultation with the fire department, with the school district, it's made in consultation with a variety of other folks. I know that the traffic calming program is more than just speed bumps. They're looking at some modified speed bumps that could be in where fire trucks could actually sort of, their wheelbase is wide enough so they don't basically hit the speed bump, a regular car would or a regular truck would. So they're working on modifications to the traditional 22-foot wide, 4-inch high speed bump. So
You should have a new charge for each cushion. So rather than get centered on the old speed bump debate, we might be able to satisfy all parties.
Okay, so are the,
Smooth, efficient movement of the.
let me ask you a question. The speed bumps that were put on Dowling, are those cushioned or are those normal speed bumps the state put in without any input at all? Do you know?
I think there's speed bumps.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they don't function very well.
Now that's the state.
Traffic is still very fast today.
I know. Anyway, that completes all of our. Yes, Tim.
There is a mock-up of the proposed speed bumps that have the wider wheelbase off to the side, off to the side, so that they don't impact the traffic. The automobiles they don't impact the automobiles, but the fire engines can go over to the side and their wheels would fit through these new speed bumps. So
It's just if we send this to the bond, to the public, they're going to know, are they actually going to get traffic calming? Call it what you want, but most community councils I've been to want speed bumps. They know where they want them. But we have seen very little put in the last few years. So that completes this. The next step for this is for the administration to take our recommendations and do an S version. And then on Tuesday night, we'll meet each other and lovely debate, deal with these issues. So we're serving dinner Tuesday night because I anticipate we're going to be there a while. So, yes, Tim.
may I recommend that the administration
Relaxing to the
sees
food.
an opportunity to fix some of the issues we talked about through other ways. It might be appropriate to have those available for us at the meeting so that we can.
PS version.
You're bad.
Place in Oregon.
Administration, since you're here, any thoughts on administration on this? Or you can do an S version and tell us later. When will we have the S version from the administration? Tuesday before the meeting or Monday, so we can.
We will keep you in closer notice for the Senate keeps its own self. We're not just going to drop it over.
Just to remind the body, it takes 6 to pass and 8 to override.
He's
So-
looking for eight. He's looking for eight.
Anyway,
We're 4 to sustain.
this meeting's over.